This is Omar Abu Amar, aka Mr. Stone, and welcome to the Megapinions Weekend Show. And today is the third episode of our show, which is titled Welcome to the third episode of the What's Hot, What's Not segment. Last week, the 2019 presidential and National Assembly elections in Nigeria were postponed by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. The election was postponed a few hours before polls were opened, and INEC gave logistical challenges as their reason for the postponement. However, the chairman of the commission, Mr. Yakubu, later added that, and I quote, apart from the logistical challenges, there were attempts to sabotage the commission's preparations, listen fire outbreaks of INEC facilities that destroyed smart card readers and voters' cards. So, and it's true that INEC facilities were, blazed in fire, because we actually talked about it last week, right? And I think I gave them a suspect. They clearly still haven't managed to catch to catch him. Well, to their own peril. Anyway, on a serious token, despite INEC reasons, President Muhammadu Buhari doesn't think it plausible to postpone the election just because a few local governments will not vote. You see, apart from the arson attacks, the reasons are that the arson attacks affected, a few local governments, about 15 to 20 of them, and so that serves as a reason for INEC to postpone the election. That's beside the logistical reasons they claimed. They also said that they also claimed that some local governments will not be able to vote, and that will go against their free and fair election principle. Therefore, they had to postpone it. But the president doesn't think a few local governments should serve as a reason not to go on with the election.
There is a postponement. Would it not be to your political advantage, sir?
No, I don't think so. It took INEC 1 year to work out and give this thing. I see no reason why we should postpone it. There are 14 local governments that there is problem. 10 in Borno, 2 in Yobe, 2 in Adamawa, and there are 770 for local government in Nigeria. Should we postpone election because of 14 local governments?
What would you do about it?
Yeah, so that's what the president said. However, the arson attacks and the arson attacks and the so-called logistical challenges were not the only events that happened last week, which are related to the 2019 elections. And one of these, what I'm talking about is that on 15th February, that is last week Friday, just a day before election day, meaning last week Friday before the day the election was postponed, it was reported that the federal government has ordered to the shutdown of all land borders from noon on Friday to noon on Sunday. Clearly, a sudden move of this nature is a caution against possible interference by external power forces or smuggling of weapons into the country that could be used to create havoc, and it's apparent. And you should remember that the governor of Kaduna State, El Rufai, made mention of foreign military interference of some sort, and he even threatened that if any foreign country sent its military or any sort, that Nigeria will eliminate those forces. Meaning, literally, he mentioned that we will kill them. So And although the government distanced itself from that, although the government distanced itself from El Rufai's statement, but the president of Nigeria did say that whoever he or she, meaning male or female, snatches a ballot box, he'll be shot. Moving forward on this same topic, and I actually have an advice for the governor. If the foreign invaders do not happen to be invaders in, and it does happen to be the British forces, he should just send the local policemen to arrest them. Because you know, Otto von Bismarck, the guy who united Germany, he did say that whenever the British forces attempt to invade Germany, he will just have the local police arrest them. So why waste a lot of heavy resources on a very small force? You know, Britain is an island. Why waste your resources? Just have them arrested. But the issue happens to be something bigger than just it happens to be bigger than invaderism or any sorts of invaders. The sudden postponement of the election puts into light the possible reason for the border closure. You see, on election, just a day before the election, the government was on alert very suddenly, and it decided to close the border from 12 noon Friday to 12 noon Sunday, and when it did that, a few hours before the election started, the election was postponed. You have to understand there's something at work here, something very external. And the fact that this very election has seen foreign attention, and as always, Nigerian election always has foreign attention. But this year's election has the most attention to it. The United States and the UK making statements and comments on the election. It's very heated up. It's very heated up, and the fact that Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate from PDP, meaning the opposition candidate, visited the United States after many years, after more than a decade of being banned from visiting the country, just a few weeks before election. You know, you would be wondering what was he in the US doing. So, in order to understand the relationship between shutting down the border and the postponement of the election, and arson attacks, we need to step into a little bit into political analysis. What is political analysis? Political analysis is the analyzation, to analyze political events so as to understand the reason why a certain major political matter took place. So, not to spend much time giving every single principle from politics, we say that in political analysis, the first step before driving a conclusion regarding the occurrence of any major event is to understand the position of the nation put into study. In this case, Nigeria. In essence, we need to understand the advantages, the advantages or the disadvantages a nation has in its position in international affairs. This determines what it can do and what it cannot, or what can be done to it by a power and what cannot be done. In essence, this explains to us what a nation can do to itself and what it can prevent other nations from doing to it, meaning itself, and its position gives you a clarity of why things happen to certain nations and it doesn't happen to other nations. As for Nigeria, it is a third world nation, and according to clear international political principles, a third world nation revolves around a greater country, meaning it revolves around the orbit, the margin which another nation influences. And this means that it is influenced by a nation that is stronger than it. And to understand this more clearly, we must understand that there are four. The world is divided into four in terms of level of power of countries and countries. So now let's discuss a bit about them so that we come back and continue discussing about Nigerian affairs. The first and highest is the superpower, which has overall influence on the whole world, And the superpower today is the United States of America. So it has more influence than it has more influence than any other nation in the world. And the second, the other great powers, and usually the great powers are more than the great powers is usually more than one. You find that there are two, three, or four, or even five. And today you have Germany, Russia, France, Britain, China, as great powers, because they are all independent of any other nation. However, the superpower sometimes compels them to do something. Because it is the superpower, it compels them. Just like recently, the United States had France and Germany and other European countries withdraw the United States and made them withdraw their investments from Iran. So it happens that way. But the great powers are very strong. Besides, they have the potential to become superpowers. If some when some major political event happened, it might just shuffle the table, and then everything changes, and you find that one of them will become the superpower. Yeah, that's how the politics is. And then there are the third are the semi-subordinate nations, the semi-subordinate nations. These are influenced by either the superpower or the great powers. Semi-subordinate nations are semi in their subordination, meaning they are subordinated to another nation because their strength has not reached the level of the great powers. But they have the potential to become great powers. And they can become great powers by threatening a great nation and so on, and then succeed in doing so, achieving their own full independence without being influenced. An example of such a semi-great power is Turkey. However, you find out it is still dominated by another nation, but sometimes it has its own minor ambitions, like the one it has against the Kurds. But still, the US compels it and forces it to do things its own way, meaning it doesn't let Turkey do things the way it wants to. That's because it is a semi-subordinate nation. And the fourth, and this is the weakest of them all, is the subordinate country. And any nation that falls under this category is influenced from all aspects of its affairs, from domestic to foreign policies. And unlike a semi-subordinate nation, it doesn't have any ambition when it comes to its regional affairs, to the extent that the loan it takes from other nations are kind of determined by the powers, in a way that when they receive loan from a nation, the power will want to benefit from the dealers. So you can see the United States of America forcing countries like Pakistan to collect loan from IMF, and that's because the U.S. controls majority, has the majority in the IMF, meaning it controls it. And when you collect a loan from it, you are within its, they give you loans with strings, and so on. So a country like Nigeria is such a nation, meaning it's a nation. It's a subordinate. Is a subordinate nation. A superpower or a great power influences it, depending on the person in office, and that's why election terms are very important and always heated up in countries like Nigeria. That's because foreign powers will always seek to influence the outcome of the results. So that's why I had to go a little bit into the level of powers in the world, because we need to understand that countries like Nigeria are not as independent as people will want to believe. Because just look at it this way: why is it that the US and the UK are always making statements about the elections here, but when it comes to the United States of America, they are always howling that that there is Russian interference in the 2016 elections. The extent that the idiot president Donald Trump was and his cabinet, and his campaign team were all and are still indicted in the courts just because of some Russian interference. You see, no nation gets to speak about their elections, but they get to speak about your elections. And another thing here is that you can't send any international observer or a Nigerian observer of the 2020 elections in the US, but the US gets to send an international observer to your country. Observers from the UK, observers from the US, and so on. Why is it that only your elections need observers? Well, oh, okay, yeah, I understand. Countries like Nigeria tend to have very uncredible elections, but why is it that there are no credible elections? Usually, no credible elections. And why is it that the last 3 elections in Nigeria were postponed? Meaning, the 2011 election was postponed after it started a few hours. It was postponed. It was literally stopped and postponed. The 2015 election was postponed like a week or 2 weeks before it, and this elections was postponed. And this year's election was postponed a few hours before polls were opened, like 3 to 4 hours. Come on, this doesn't really make sense. So the reason you from Nigeria or from any weak nation, the reason you don't get to talk about their elections is because you are not a superpower, and you're not even a great power. You're not even a semi-subordinate power. You are a subordinate nation, and they are superpowers and great powers. So you don't get to do anything to them. That's the advantage they have over you, and it's going to continue that way as long as you stay a weak nation. Nigeria and its ilk are nothing but pawns in the world to the powers and quasi-states, as the Lancaster University professor Christopher Clapham labeled African countries in his book Africa and the International System. He said, and I quote, "Quasi-states are states which are recognized as sovereign and independent units by other states within the international system, but which cannot meet the demands of empirical statehood, which requires the capacity to exercise effective power within their own territories and be able to defend themselves against external attack. Such states have negative or juridical sovereignty. In that sovereignty is ascribed to them by other states, but do not possess the positive sovereignty which derives from effective control." Food for thought. Food for thought. With this, I round up today's session, and we wait for the presidential election result, which we discuss in our next episode, Nigeria after elections. Thank you. Bye.